Fairbanks Focus is a locally produced public affairs program created in part by University of Alaska Fairbanks, KTVF, and Fairbanks Economic Development Corporation.
Thanks for joining us here at Fairbanks Focus Alaska View. I'm Annette Pearson, and today I'm joined by a very special guest, Dr. Leroy Chow. Hi, Dr. Chow. Thanks so much for joining us here at Fairbanks Focus and here in Fairbanks. We're real excited to have you. Tell us a little bit about why we are so excited to have you here.
Sure. No, it's a pleasure to be here. I'm here in Fairbanks with the Space Foundation, and we are going to different schools in the greater Fairbanks area and talking to school kids and trying to get them excited about space and educate them a little bit about what we do.
Awesome. Now, you are a retired astronaut, is that correct?
Right. I was an astronaut at NASA for 15 years, from 1990 until 2005, and over that period of time I had the good fortune to fly 4 times into space.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
And I understand that you actually been on some missions as well with Russia, is that right?
That's right. I flew my first 3 missions on space shuttles. On my 4th mission, I trained with the Russians half of my time and flew up on a Russian Soyuz out of the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. And we went up to the International Space Station. I served as the commander and NASA science officer of the mission for 6.5 months.
Very cool.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool. And so with the Space Foundation and your work with them,
mm-hmm.
you guys are all about getting kids involved and learning.
Sure.
And having space be sort of a launching pad for learning.
Right, right.
Tell us a little bit about that and the work that you do with them.
Sure. Space Foundation is actually a nonprofit in the United States, and we are kind of an advocacy group or an information group for the space industry. And a big important part of that is the education arm, and that's why we're up here, is to talk to school kids and educate people about what space exploration and space industry is all about. And so that's what we're doing here. We're talking to mostly school kids, but we've also been visiting with Kiwanis clubs and doing public events at the library here, both tonight and Friday night, and educating the public about what we do in space as well.
Very cool. And for our viewers, this will probably air on Sunday, and so today is Wednesday, and we're really excited to have you. And it's really cool to get to actually meet someone and talk to someone who has such knowledge of actually being in space. What's your favorite thing about actually traveling to space?
Well, being weightless is kind of a neat thing to float around, but and you actually get pretty used to it quickly. But the best part about being in space is looking back at the Earth. The colors are very vivid and bright, and every part of the Earth looks different and is beautiful in its own way. And so, that's probably the funnest or most enjoyable part of it. But looking at looking at the Aurora Borealis, the northern lights from space, that's pretty spectacular as well. And as spectacular it is on the ground. But a lot of the work that we do in space is very rewarding. We do a lot of research work. We're trying to figure out how to keep humans healthy in space for longer periods of time, which will be very important as we start planning missions to go farther and longer in space.
Cool. And do you know of any missions that are in the works right now for?
Well, yeah, we are. The government, the U.S. government, is still working on a exploration program, and so we're developing the next generation spacecraft called Orion, as well as a family of rockets called the Space Launch System, and that will enable us to explore beyond low Earth orbit. So different destinations are being looked at right now. We haven't completely focused on one yet, but we are slowly getting there.
And where were you the day that they landed the Curious over there on Mars?
The Curiosity rover? Yeah, I was in Houston and followed that very closely. It was very interesting and very exciting, the news that's coming back. Curiosity is about to analyze its first drilling sample, so we're all looking forward to that.
Yeah, that was pretty. I know we were watching it too,
mm-hmm.
live, and it was such a neat event.
Mm-hmm.
It's very cool. And as far as getting out and educating the public,
mm-hmm.
what's your favorite thing about going and talking to kids?
Well, it's mostly their excitement. Everybody seems to be pretty excited about space, but kids in particular, they seem very excited, especially in a place like up here where they're not used to seeing astronauts come by. And so it's always rewarding to do that. I was an 8-year-old kid, and I was inspired by the Apollo program, and so I feel if I can give some of that back and inspire some kids here, it doesn't have to be about the space program. It can be about whatever. Just get them thinking about what they'd like to do with their lives, and that's very rewarding for me as well.
Very cool, and we're really happy to have you here giving back to our community too. I know a lot of people went into the planning and the work to get you up
Oh,
here.
absolutely, sure.
And I know you've talked about doing the Space Symposium.
Mm-hmm.
Tell our viewers what the Space Symposium is and how that happens.
Sure. The Space Symposium is an annual event. It always happens in April, and it's in Colorado Springs where the Space Foundation is based. And all the people in aerospace, it's kind of the big event of the year for networking, for attending the symposia, learning about different areas of aerospace, and just, really kind of that's the central location for a week. This year it'll be the kind of that first week in April. Don't have the dates right at the tip of my tongue, but it's somewhere around the I believe the 7th, April 7th that week.
Okay. Well, and I have another friend who's worked for different companies and has also been to the symposium and just talks about what an amazing time he has and what an amazing thing that was to see all the people who are working on it.
Oh, sure, yeah.
So how do you feel about the private industry that's sort of coming into space travel? Yeah,
the commercial industry is very impressive. It's very exciting. They're developing spacecraft with help from NASA, and I'm hopeful that one or more of them will be successful in launching humans into space, and that'll kind of herald in a new era of commercial space application.
So I had somebody ask me earlier today, so do you have to be a doctor to be an astronaut?
Well, actually, I'm a PhD in chemical engineering, so I'm not a medical doctor, but we do have both PhDs and medical doctors in the program. It's not a strict requirement. Most of the folks who come through have advanced degrees, maybe at least a master's degree, but we have a few folks that also just come in with a bachelor's degree. Okay. So it's not a strict requirement.
Well, I wasn't sure. It was kind of one of those things where it's like, well, I think you have to have a pretty high education level to be an astronaut.
Yeah. Well, you have to have at least a bachelor's degree in science or engineering. Yeah.
Well, and what would you say to anyone who is thinking about wanting, especially since I know you're talking to kids, what do you say to the ones who are like, well, I want to be an astronaut, I want to be part of space travel? What kind of paths would you say that they should be going down?
Oh, the most important thing is to work hard, study, stay healthy, make the right choices, stay away from drugs and eat right, sleep right, study, work hard. I mean, that's the main thing, is just keep on that straight path and do the best you can, and that's the best chance you have in succeeding whatever it is that you want to do.
Very cool. And is there anything else that you'd like to share with our viewers at home? Anything else that you'd like that you just have always wanted to tell people?
Well, I always tell people it's never too early or too late to think about what you want to do with the rest of your life. And the most important thing to me is to continue to move forward. Don't kind of get stuck in a rut. Especially for young people. I mean, it's okay to change your mind. It's natural as people accumulate more life experience to kind of develop new interests or to shift their focus. And there's nothing wrong with that. But, make a plan and work and go for it.
Do you see yourself shifting it all away from space into any other fields?
I have, actually. I left NASA about 7 years ago, and I still have my finger in space. I still do work with the Space Foundation. I'm on the NASA Advisory Council and do a few other things, but I'm kind of branching out into some other areas as well, and that's been a lot of fun.
Very cool. And where else can people see or read about you or learn more about the Space Foundation?
Well, Space Foundation is online, so you can go to the Space Foundation website. It's www.spacefoundation.org. And for me, I have a website. It's www.leroychiao.org, and Chiao is spelled C-H-I-A-O.
Very cool. And what was when you were younger, how did you first know and get involved? I know you said something about being 8.
Right, I was an 8-year-old kid watching the Apollo moon landing, and that's kind of when it started for me. The dream started for me, where I figured out that I wanted to be an astronaut. So it was always in the back of my mind. I knew I had to work hard in school and get good grades and go to university, which I did. I studied engineering, which was natural because I was interested in technical things, and so that enabled me or qualified me to apply to NASA, and so that's what I did.
So, Dr. Chiao, tell us a little bit more about your actual space missions and the time that you've spent in space.
Sure. During my time at NASA, I spent 15 years at NASA, and over that period of time, I had the good opportunity to fly 4 times in space. My first 3 missions were on space shuttles. My first mission was on board Space Shuttle Columbia, and we were a space lab flight. What that means is in the back of the payload bay, instead of having a satellite or a deployable, we actually had a laboratory module. And so we conducted scientific investigations for 2 weeks while we were in orbit. And these were in the days before we had an International Space Station, so that was the way that we did research in space. So we conducted over 80 different investigations working on 2 shifts, 12 hours on, 12 hours off, with 1 shift always asleep, and came back with quite a bit of scientific information. My second mission, I flew shortly after my first one, and we were on Space Shuttle Endeavour. The main purpose of that flight was to use the robotic arm to go and retrieve a Japanese satellite that had been loaded with scientific samples, material science samples, so that we could study the effect of the space environment on these different materials and use that knowledge to, in the future, build more robust spacecraft. But the biggest deal for me, personally, was it was the first chance I had to put on a spacesuit and actually go outside of the vehicle and conduct 2 spacewalks. And what we were doing on those spacewalks, we were testing tools and construction techniques that we would later use to build the International Space Station. So after that flight, I was on the ground for a few years doing some more support work, continuing to develop those tools and some modifications to the spacesuit. And then I got turned around on my third mission, which was on Space Shuttle Discovery, and we were a space station assembly flight. In fact, we were the last mission to go to the space station before the first crew was launched to go and live and work on the station, just 2 weeks after we got back.
So that's kind of like being a construction worker in space.
It actually is, very much so. So we went up and we used the robotic arm to position 2 new pieces on the space station, and I led the spacewalk team. We had teams of 2 teams of 2, and we went out over 4 spacewalks, and we actually tightened bolts using our tools and made electrical connectors to bring those pieces to life. And we also installed the main data link between the space station and the ground. That was a big antenna dish that we actually bolted in place and during spacewalks and deployed. And it remains today the main data link to get all the video down and all the commanding and the telemetry and experimental information from the research down to the researchers on the ground. So that was a neat deal. After that mission landed, somehow 10 years had gone by, and I was trying to figure out what to do, and the chief astronaut asked me to join the Expedition Corps. And this was going to be a kind of a shift, change in direction. I was still going to be a flyer, but instead of training and flying, 2-week shuttle missions in support of building the station, I was going to go actually live and work on the station, train to live and work on the station on what turned out to be a 6.5-month flight. And so I also was, it was more than that. I had to figure out if I really wanted to live in a confined area like that for 6.5 months. But beyond that, I had to, I got to fly aboard the Russian Soyuz, and that was a neat thing because I had flown 3 shuttle missions, and this was a chance to fly on their rocket and their spacecraft. And so I had to learn the Russian language pretty much to a fluent level. And spent half my life in Russia over the training flow, which was 3.5 years. So 1 month in Star City, 1 month in Houston, back and forth that whole time over 3.5 years. It was a very interesting and enriching experience. Then when we flew the mission, 6.5 months was kind of a different experience from a 2-week shuttle flight. It's more like a marathon rather than a sprint, a short shuttle flight. But it was the culmination of my flying career, brought to bear all the experience that I had accumulated in the past, and it was a very successful mission. And with the end of that mission, I kind of wrapped up my NASA career.
Well, that sounds like I guess I never realized. I mean, I know that there's an incredible amount of planning that goes into being in space. But so you planned for that mission for over 3 years, then? Right.
We did training for 3.5 years.
Wow.
Yep.
So and 1 month at a time.
Back and forth all the time. Yep.
Wow. So you're fluent then in Russia. What's your favorite bit of Russian? Was there ever any major communication errors?
No, not really. Not during the mission. We were pretty much up on each other's languages. The Russians have to learn English too, because they're in the same situation as we are, and having to travel back and forth and train and work with each other's mission control centers.
So, do you work together as a unit for those 3 years as you're preparing to?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, sure.
Oh, very cool. So you by the time you were there, 6 months in those confined areas.
You've already gotten to know each other very well. Yeah.
Well, that's good. Yep. Imagine it makes for a much nicer living situation.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Right.
Well, the amount of knowledge that it takes. You've talked about everything from being someone who's flying a shuttle to being a construction worker to being a research gatherer and
sure.
It sounds like
right. You kind of have to be a jack of all trades to be an astronaut. Yeah.
Which is really, really cool. I mean, it's really amazing work, and sounds like it's been very rewarding.
Oh, it has been. Yeah, it was a rewarding 15 years. Yeah.
Very cool. Well, thanks again for being on our show. Is there anything that you'd like to say in Russian for us?
Oh, what would you like me to say? Я желаю вам успехов.
What does that mean?
I wish you all good luck.
Say it for me one more time.
Я желаю вам успехов.
Я желаю
вам успехов.
Wonderful. Well, thanks again for being here. It's been really amazing talking to you and hearing more about your flight missions. And I hope we get to see you again here in Fairbanks.
Oh, would love to come back. Yes, thank you.
My daughter was very excited that you were at her school.
Yeah,
she was very sad
good.
that she wasn't in the right class.
Oh, no,
So
okay.
we're going to come back and see you on Friday.
Good, okay, good. All right, we'll look forward to it. Thank you.
Well, thanks again for joining us here at Fairbanks Focus Alaska View. This is Annette Pearson signing off.
Hello, and thank you for joining us. I'm Samantha Larson with the Fairbanks Focus Alaska View. Today I'm sitting down with Sean Lotz, the Co-op Market Grocery and Deli front-end team leader, and Matthew Poitras, the produce team leader with the Co-op Market Grocery and Deli. Hi guys, thanks for joining us.
Morning.
Morning. How are you?
Good.
Thank you.
Good. So back in November, we had Sean Lotz on the show. I wanted to have her on again today, just kind of remind our viewers out there that the Co-op Market Grocery and Deli will be opening in the soon future. I know there's no set date yet, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just want to get the word out there to remind everyone, hey, we're here, this is what we're doing. So Sean, tell me, since we last spoke in November, have there been any major changes to the overall plan for the Co-op Market Grocery and Deli?
The store plan itself hasn't changed much, but the interior is radically different. The store is almost finished. We've got walls up, paint on the walls, refrigeration, shelving are in, and we've got check stands that were made by volunteers in town and produce stands that were also made by volunteers in town.
Okay.
So a whole lot has happened since I was here last.
Nice. Matthew, tell me, any changes, radical changes, anything in the produce department?
Well, I got involved in the project in late December, and since then the store has really come together. There's, like Sean said, we have all the fixtures. It looks like a beautiful place that I personally want to shop in. Right now, I'm really excited about getting in touch with all of our local farmers to try to stock the place with as much local produce as possible.
Well, and since it's going to be warm here, in the next 6 months or so,
Right.
Not anytime soon, unfortunately. But how will you start going about that once it gets warmer and the farmers, around what month or time frame do you think that you'll be able to start taking in produce from the farmers in town?
Well, most of the farmers will have, hopefully, stuff by the end of May, whether it be little baby greens or things they've had in their greenhouse. Some farmers are blessed with nice heated greenhouses, so we can get things going early. Plus, we have Johnson Family Farms in town that does hydroponics all year round, so we can have that right off the bat as soon as we open.
Okay.
But hopefully we'll be getting underway with as much local produce as possible from May on.
Oh, nice. And how long about into the fall will you be able to get the fresh produce from farmers?
Well, that depends on when the frost comes.
Yeah.
At least for greens. It could be as late as mid-October, and then we'll have things like potatoes and carrots and your other winter storage crops.
I like those.
Yeah, there's some great food growing up here.
Okay, and so my next question I would have to be for the produce. I know we talked a little bit about it last time, but just as a refresher, and since we have a produce guy here, who better to tell us? Whenever we're not able to get the produce from the local farmers, we'll be outsourcing to. Tell me. Where are we going to get it from?
We have a veggie wholesaler down in Anchorage. They have a bunch of different branches between Anchorage and the Pacific Northwest. And they have some Alaska-grown stuff, and they have some stuff that's from the lower 48 and places beyond. So I'm trying to source things as close as possible.
So maybe like Seattle or...
Yeah, maybe Seattle,
Washington.
Oregon, California, but And my long-term goal is to develop some really good food storage in the Fairbanks region, so we can keep a lot of the stuff that we grow up here further on into the season.
Oh, I think that'll definitely help. That'll be beneficial.
I think it would be great.
And so another question I had for you, Sean, as far as the soft opening of the store, do you have any kind of estimate of how many jobs the store is going to create for people here in town?
I believe hiring for all departments, I believe we'll have about 19 positions. Is that what you remember?
Mm-hmm.
I think around 19. And then, of course, there are all of the consultants or the accountants,
Mm-hmm.
or lawyers, people that we employ in the community outside the co-op.
So, as far as the jobs go, have you already done all of the hiring for the store? Are you still in the process for that?
Well, we've hired most of the department managers. We are still looking for the grocery team leader. We are hiring cashiers and produce assistant, deli assistant. So we are hiring, and those positions will come on closer to opening, so
Okay.
sometime in March.
Right, okay. So here's my biggest question that I have for you that I was kind of thinking about, while preparing for the interview. So say I'm married and I go to my husband one day and I say, okay, it's Saturday, it's time to go grocery shopping.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to go to the co-op market, grocery and deli, get our things. Well, what if he says, why can't we go to Freddy's or Safeway? It's right down the road, it's closer, I don't want to shop all day with you, typical husband response.
Mm-hmm.
And what would be the best rebuttal for that? How do I say that it's more beneficial to go to the co-op?
Well, I think first and most importantly is that it's a store that is owned by community members. So we don't have outside shareholders, outside investors. It's actually owned by people that live in this community. And currently we have well over 1,500 member owners that have paid a $200 equity investment. So it's a direct economic benefit to the community. Money is going to stay here. Other stores employ locals as well, but we're employing locals. And also Matt was talking about local farmers. It's a way to support local farmers and hopefully encourage production of not just local produce, but other local goods as well.
And isn't it true that the meat, like the fish, is wild caught, and the meat that you're going to supply in the store is humanely raised? Is that right?
We are going to source locally for as much meat as we can, and not being the meat and seafood buyer, I don't know the standards required for, but I know that we are very concerned with sustainability and responsible food choices.
Right.
So.
We don't want to sell anything in the store that we don't feel is an inspired product that we can stand behind.
Right.
Yeah, well said.
So, yeah.
So would that kind of be your response, Matthew, if you were the wife and your husband was complaining about driving across town?
Oh, geez.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but I had to.
It's hard to put myself in that position. As with everything that Sean said about supporting the local economy and just helping grow a stronger Alaska and work on our self-reliance, I agree with all of that. I think I couldn't have said it any better. And it's also just going to be a beautiful store to shop at. If your husband doesn't want to spend all day shopping, we're a medium. Well, that's a different story.
No.
But it's going to be a beautiful store. We have about, I think, 4,500 square feet.
4,200 square feet of retail space. So we'd like to say big enough to meet your needs, small enough to meet your neighbors. So it won't take you all day to shop. You can find what you need, but you can find it quickly.
Right. And just as a refresher, can you tell me all the departments the store is going to have, just so our viewers, who didn't tune in last time?
Well, we have produce. We have a wellness department, which will have supplements, and health and beauty aids are included in that. We'll have an extensive bulk section that we're really excited about. We've got a deli section, and it's going to be a small grab-and-go deli initially. We have a few tables for seating. And And then we have the grocery department where you find all of the grocery items, dry foods, boxed foods, and have I forgotten anything?
Well, there's all the meats.
Oh, yes.
We'll
How could I
have
forget meat?
a whole
Okay.
meat and seafood department, dairy products, cheese, eggs, milk. What else? All sorts of frozen and refrigerated goods.
Yes.
We're going to be a full-service grocery store.
So you pretty much got everything anybody needs.
Hopefully, yeah. And if we
But the more
don't, we
healthier
can find it.
and environment-friendly version of everything, though.
And the best customer service in town. So.
I'm excited. I can't wait. Okay, and so I think we're almost out of time, but just before we wrap up, now you're going to have a soft opening, is that correct, before the grand opening?
Yes, we will. And we haven't set a date, but we're looking sometime in March.
Okay.
So, and that will be announced to our contact list. And people can find us at coopmarket.org
Okay.
or our Facebook page, Co-op Market. Or they can call the office for 571-1023. And they can become a member owner.
Oh, yay. And tell our viewers just real quick, Matthew, if you would like to take this one, tell our viewers how you become a member owner. What's the process?
Oh, I think Sean can feel this a little better.
Oh, okay. Well, people can go online and pay their equity investment. The full equity investment is $200. You're a full member owner then. And this is not a fee. This is not a repeating payment. $200 is your
One time.
full equity investment, yes. And then you're a member owner. You're one of the owners of a community-owned grocery store. People can call the office and do credit card over the phone if they wish, or they can send in a payment, and you can find information about that on our website as well.
But anybody can shop. You don't have to be a member owner in order to shop there, correct?
That's right, yes. Anyone can shop there, and anyone can become a member owner.
Okay. All right. Is there anything else that you guys would like to add before we wrap up? No? It's kind of
Bare bones, yeah.
kind of a stare off here we got. All right. Well, I'd like to thank you guys again for coming on. It was a pleasure. I'm really looking forward to the opening of this. I think it's going to be a great place to shop. Very, Fairbanks friendly, very environmentally friendly, and just a happy place. Not saying that I don't like the other stores, but I mean I think that this will be a more, like I said, Fairbanks friendly, kind of meet your neighbors place. So I'm looking forward to it. All right. Well, that is going to do it for us here today on the show. My name's Samantha Larson with the Fairbanks Focus Alaska View. Thank you for joining us, and have a good one.